The morning sun cast long shadows through the blinds of Tom Miller's apartment as he stared at the dusty box sitting on his kitchen table. The delivery man had dropped it off just minutes ago, and now Tom couldn't stop looking at the return address, his old childhood home, a place he hadn't visited in over 2 decades. His coffee grew cold beside him as he finally gathered the courage to open it. The box's seal broke with a soft crack, releasing a gentle cloud of dust that made him sneeze. Inside, he found stacks of old papers, folders, and what looked like his father's research materials from his days working at the military research facility. Tom picked up a manila envelope that caught his eye. It was marked Personal Project Starbridge in his father's messy handwriting. His father had passed away 3 months ago, and Tom still hadn't fully processed the loss. Opening the envelope felt like hearing his father's voice again. As he spread the contents across his table, something fell out and landed with a soft click. It was a crystal pendant about the size of his thumb, attached to a simple silver chain. The crystal seemed to catch the morning light in strange ways, creating patterns on the wall that didn't quite match the sun's position. "What were you working on, Dad?" Tom muttered, picking up the pendant. The moment his fingers touched it, he felt a slight warmth spread through his hand. He almost dropped it in surprise, but found himself unable to let go. The crystal surface had an odd texture, smooth yet somehow alive under his touch. Among the papers, he found encrypted files and old photographs. Most of them showed various scientific equipment and what looked like crash site images, though they were too grainy to make out clearly. One photo, however, made him pause. It showed his father standing in front of a large metal structure, partly covered by a tarp. The date stamp read 1995, the year Tom turned 5. That year had always been a blur in Tom's memory. He remembered fragments. A bright blue light in the woods behind their house, his father spending countless nights in the basement lab, and strange dreams of a girl with glowing skin who would talk to him about the stars. As he dug deeper into the box, he found a notebook filled with his father's observations. Most pages contained complex equations and diagrams, but one entry stood out. Subject S has formed an unexpected bond with Tom. Their interaction defies all protocols, but I cannot bring myself to stop it. There's something pure about their connection. The higher-ups would never understand. I must protect them both. Tom's hands trembled as he read the words. More memories surfaced, whispered conversations through his bedroom wall, a lullaby in a language he didn't understand, and the smell of something like vanilla mixed with ozone. His phone buzzed, making him jump. It was a reminder about his afternoon meeting at the aerospace facility where he worked as an engineer. Tom quickly gathered the materials, but when he tried to put the pendant back in the box, something stopped him. After a moment's hesitation, he slipped it into his pocket. Throughout the day, Tom could feel the crystal's warmth against his leg. During his lunch break, he attempted to decode some of the encrypted files using his engineering expertise. The fragments he managed to unlock mentioned something about an extraterrestrial vessel and young survivor, but most of the text remained scrambled. That evening, as Tom sat in his dimly lit living room surrounded by his father's papers, the pendant began to pulse with a soft blue light, the same color he remembered from the woods 28 years ago. His father's last letter, found at the bottom of the box, suddenly made more sense. "Son, if you're reading this, then it's time you knew the truth. Your sister is coming home." Yes, you read that correctly. The dreams you had as a child weren't dreams at all. I hope you can forgive me for keeping this secret, but I had to protect you both. The pendant will guide you to her. She's grown into someone remarkable, Tom. Just like you. Tom held the glowing pendant up to the light, watching as it pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. His whole world had changed in a single day, and somehow he knew this was just the beginning. Tom didn't sleep that night. The pendant's soft blue glow filled his bedroom with dancing shadows as he lay in bed, his mind racing with questions. Around 3 in the morning, he got up and walked to his window, looking out at the stars that seemed unusually bright. As he held the crystal up to the night sky, A wave of dizziness washed over him. The world tilted, and suddenly he wasn't in his apartment anymore. He was 5 years old again, sitting in the backyard of his childhood home. The air smelled like pine needles, and something sweet he couldn't name. "You shouldn't be out here alone," a small voice said beside him. Tom turned to see a girl about his age sitting cross-legged in the grass. Her skin had a slight shimmer to it, like moonlight on water. Her eyes were deep and dark, with tiny points of light in them like stars. "I'm not alone," young Tom replied in the memory. "You're here." The girl smiled, and tiny patterns of light danced across her face. "Your father says we have to be careful. Some people wouldn't understand." The memory shifted. Now he was in his father's basement lab, peeking through the door that was always supposed to be locked. His father stood next to a large metal container that glowed with the same blue light as the pendant. The girl was there too, touching the container's surface while his father took notes. "The neural connection is stronger than we expected," his father's voice echoed through time. "She's adapting to Earth's atmosphere faster than any of our models predicted." And her bond with Tom. His father's voice trailed off as he noticed young Tom at the door. Tom gasped as the memory released him, finding himself back in his apartment, gripping the windowsill. The pendant had grown warmer, and its pulsing seemed more urgent now. Without thinking, he grabbed his keys and jacket. The drive to his childhood home took 2 hours. The house had been empty since his father's death, waiting to be sold. As Tom pulled into the overgrown driveway, his headlights swept across the familiar front porch where he used to play. Everything looked smaller than he remembered. Using his old key, he entered the house. Dust motes danced in the beam of his flashlight as he made his way to the basement door. The pendant's pulsing grew stronger with each step, its light now bright enough to cast clear shadows on the walls. The basement lab was exactly as he remembered it. Old equipment sat covered in sheets, and filing cabinets lined the walls. But something was different. The pendant was pulling him toward the far corner, where a section of concrete wall looked slightly newer than the rest. Tom ran his hands over the surface, feeling for anything unusual. His fingers found a small indentation, barely visible. When he pressed the pendant into it, it fit perfectly. There was a soft click, followed by a low hum, and a panel of wall slid aside to reveal a hidden room. Inside, he found a small space filled with strange technology. Screens covered in alien symbols lined the walls, all dark now except one. On it, a message played in English. "Timeline approaching convergence. Reunion protocols initiated." But what caught his attention was a hologram floating in the center of the room. It showed a star map, with one particular point pulsing in sync with his pendant. Below it, coordinates scrolled past, along with a message: "Observatory Point Alpha. She will be waiting." As Tom stared at the hologram, more memories flooded back. The girl teaching him words in her language, them sharing secrets about the stars, her telling him about her home, a planet circling a distant sun. The day his father told him she had to leave, and how they had both cried. The pendant grew cool in his hand, its light settling into a steady glow. Tom took out his phone and copied down the coordinates. The hologram showed a date and time. Tomorrow night. After almost 30 years, he was finally going to see his sister again. As he climbed the basement stairs, Tom paused to look back at the hidden room. "I remember now," he whispered into the darkness. "I remember everything." The military base looked different in daylight than it had in Tom's recovered memories. The fence was newer, topped with sharp wire, but the old warning signs were the same. He pulled up to the security checkpoint, heart pounding as he showed his aerospace contractor ID badge. "I have a meeting with General Roberts about the new satellite project," Tom said, the lie feeling strange on his tongue. He had spent all morning creating a fake meeting request in the base's system, using his engineering access codes. The guard checked his tablet, nodded, and waved him through. The pendant sat cold against his chest, hidden under his shirt. As he walked across the base, memories guided his feet, Memories of holding his father's hand, walking these same paths as a child on the days when the base daycare was closed and his father had to bring him to work. Building 7 looked abandoned now, its windows dusty and dark. Tom's key card shouldn't have worked on a defunct building, but when he swiped it, the door clicked open. Inside, the air smelled old and unused, but he could see fresh footprints in the dust. Someone else had been here recently. In his father's notes, he had found references to sublevel 3, room 342. The elevator still worked, humming softly as it carried him down. The pendant began to warm again as he stepped out into a dimly lit hallway. Emergency lights cast a faint red glow, making the place look like something from another world. Room 342's door was heavy steel, with a keypad lock that looked newer than everything else around it. Tom pulled out his tablet and connected it to the keypad. The decryption program he had written that morning began its work, testing combinations based on dates and numbers he had found in his father's files. While he waited, Tom noticed something odd about the wall beside the door. There were scratches in the paint, very faint, forming patterns that looked like the symbols he had seen in the basement. He traced them with his finger, and suddenly the pendant flashed bright blue. The keypad beeped, its screen displaying Access Granted in green letters. Tom pushed the door open, revealing a vast room filled with old equipment. In the center stood something massive covered by a tarp, its shape familiar from the photograph he had found. Tom pulled the tarp away, sending dust flying everywhere. Underneath was a sleek pod, about the size of a small car, its surface covered in the same symbols as the wall. It looked like it was made of some kind of metal, but when Tom touched it, it felt warm and almost soft, like living tissue. "I remember you," he whispered. This was where they had kept her, where his father had worked to protect her. The pod had been her home until they could figure out how to help her survive in Earth's atmosphere. Moving to a nearby computer terminal, Tom found it was still active, running on some kind of power source he didn't recognize. He logged in using his father's old credentials, which he had found encrypted in the basement files. The screen came to life, showing him video logs from 30 years ago. His father appeared, looking young and worried. Day 47 of Project Starbridge. The child is adapting well to our atmosphere. Her ability to form mental connections is remarkable. She's formed an especially strong bond with my son Tom. I've never seen anything like it. More videos played. Tom watched his younger self playing with the alien girl while scientists observed through one-way glass. He saw how she taught him to understand her thoughts just by touching the crystal she had given him. The same crystal he now wore around his neck. A final video showed his father, looking much older, recording a message just months before his death. "If you're watching this, Tom, then you've remembered her. We had to send her back when they tried to take control of the project. But she promised she would return when it was safe, when her people were ready. The pendant will guide you to her. You were never just test subjects to me. You were both my children." The pendant pulsed warmly against Tom's chest as tears rolled down his face. On the screen, coordinates began to appear, the same ones he had seen in the basement. But now there was more. A time, a date, and a message that made his heart skip. "Brother, I'm coming home." The old observatory stood on top of Pine Ridge Mountain, its white dome gleaming in the sunset. Tom parked his car in the empty lot and checked the time again, 8:43 p.m. The coordinates had led him here, to this remote location miles from the nearest town. As he walked toward the building, the pendant began to pulse with a rhythm that matched his heartbeat. The door was unlocked, which surprised him. Inside, the air felt different, charged with a kind of energy that made his skin tingle. The main observation room was dark except for the starlight coming through the open dome. Tom's footsteps echoed on the metal floor as he approached the massive telescope. The pendant's glow grew stronger, casting blue light across the scientific equipment. "You still wear it after all these years," a voice said from the shadows. It was soft and musical, with an accent he couldn't place but somehow remembered. Tom turned slowly, his heart racing. A figure stepped into the blue light. Tom's breath caught in his throat. She was tall and graceful, with features that were both familiar and otherworldly. Her skin had a subtle iridescence, like mother of pearl in moonlight. Her eyes were deep violet, with tiny points of light that moved like stars. Her hair seemed to float slightly, as if gravity didn't quite have the same hold on her as it did on everything else. "Alice," he whispered, the childhood nickname coming back to him instantly. That's what his father had called her, because they couldn't pronounce her real name. She smiled, and patterns of light rippled across her skin. "Hello, little brother," she said, though she now appeared younger than him. "Though I suppose you're not so little anymore." Tom took a step forward, then stopped, unsure. Alice closed the distance between them and took his hands in hers. Her touch was warm, and the moment their skin met, memories flooded back stronger than ever. "I was 5 when you came," Tom said, his voice thick with emotion. "You taught me words in your language. You showed me pictures of your home in my mind." Alice nodded. "And you taught me about Earth, about cars and television, and ice cream." She laughed softly. "I still miss ice cream." "Why did you have to leave?" Tom asked, though part of him already knew the answer from his father's files. Alice's expression grew serious. "Some people in your military discovered I was teaching you things. They wanted to study our connection, to use it. Your father, our father, he wouldn't let them. He helped me escape back to my ship before they could take me." She turned and walked to the telescope, touching it gently. "Look," she said, adjusting the controls with familiar ease. "That bright star, just to the left of Orion's belt. That's my home system." Tom looked through the eyepiece. The stars seemed to pulse with the same blue light as his pendant. "All these years, I thought they were just dreams," he said. "Father never told me the truth." "He protected us both," Alice said. "If they had known you could understand our language, that you had learned our ways of sharing thoughts and memories, they would have taken you too." She reached up and touched the pendant on Tom's chest. It flared brightly, and suddenly he could feel her presence in his mind, just like when they were children. Images flashed between them: her journey home, her years of preparation, her people's careful planning for first contact with Earth. "I'm here as an ambassador now," she said, both aloud and in his mind. "My people are ready to open diplomatic relations with Earth. But first," she smiled that familiar smile that had haunted his dreams for decades, "first, I wanted to see my brother again." Tom found himself smiling back, tears in his eyes. "Does this mean you're staying?" "Yes," she said, "but things will be different this time. No more hiding. No more secrets." She looked up through the observatory's dome at the stars. "It's time for both our worlds to know the truth about each other." The pendant pulsed between them, its light now a mixture of blue and gold. Outside, the first rays of moonlight began to shine through the dome, making Alice's skin shimmer like stardust. 2 weeks had passed since the observatory meeting. Tom sat across from Alice in his apartment, watching in amusement as she experienced her first cup of hot chocolate in nearly 30 years. Her eyes lit up, literally, as she took another sip, tiny sparkles of light dancing across her skin. "I forgot how wonderful Earth food could be," she said, holding the cup close to her face to smell it better. "Though I still have to be careful with some things. Your air is thicker than what I'm used to, and some substances react differently with my biology." Tom nodded, thinking about the special supplements she had to take to stay healthy on Earth. It was just one of the many things they had discussed during their daily meetings. Each time they got together, more pieces of their shared past fell into place. "I found more of Father's old files," Tom said, pulling out his tablet. "Including this." He showed her a digital copy of a document. It was a legal adoption paper, dated just weeks after she had first arrived on Earth. Their father had somehow managed to file it through unofficial channels, listing her as his daughter under an Earth name. Alice touched the screen gently. "He really did think of everything," she said softly. "On my world, we have a similar custom. When two beings share a deep mental connection, they become family under our laws. The moment we first shared thoughts as children, we became siblings in both our cultures. She reached for the pendant around Tom's neck, and he let her hold it. The crystal glowed brighter at her touch. "This is more than just a communication device," she explained. "It's a piece of my homeworld's crystal caves. These crystals grow in pairs, and they stay connected no matter how far apart they are. I have its twin." She pulled out an identical crystal from beneath her shirt. When she held them close together, both began to pulse with synchronized light. "Father helped me tune them to our specific mental patterns. That's why you could sometimes feel my presence even after I left." Tom remembered the strange dreams he'd had over the years, the feelings of someone watching over him during hard times. "You were checking on me." Alice smiled. "As much as I could without risking detection. I saw you graduate college, start your career. I wanted to reach out so many times, but it wasn't safe. Our people needed to be sure Earth was ready for contact." "And now?" Tom asked. "What changed?" "Your world has evolved," she said. "Your understanding of space, of other possibilities, has grown. And—" she paused, her expression becoming serious. "We've been watching how humans handle their differences, how you're learning to accept those who are different from you. It's not perfect, but there's progress." She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. "There's something else you should know," she said. "Father didn't just protect me. He helped establish the first real communication between our worlds. Those late nights in his lab, he was working with my people to create a framework for peaceful contact." Tom joined her at the window. "Is that why you chose to reveal yourself now? To finish what he started?" Alice turned to him, her eyes reflecting the city lights like tiny galaxies. "Partly. But mostly because I missed my brother. And because you deserve to know who you really are." "What do you mean?" Tom asked, feeling a strange tingle in his chest where the pendant rested. "The mental connection we shared as children. It changed you," she said carefully. "Humans don't usually have the ability to share thoughts and memories like we do. But you can. Father's research showed that your brain patterns began to alter after we started communicating. You're probably the only human who can truly understand our way of thinking." She touched her crystal to his, and suddenly Tom's mind was flooded with images, not just memories this time, but visions of what could be. He saw himself helping to bridge the gap between their species, using his unique ability to facilitate understanding. "Our father made us siblings," Alice said, her voice full of emotion. "But what we can do together might change both our worlds." The crystals pulsed with a new intensity, and in that light, Tom could see their reflection in the window. A human and an alien, yet somehow perfectly matched as brother and sister. The black SUVs had been parked outside Tom's apartment building for 3 days now. He watched them from his window, while Alice paced behind him, her skin flickering with nervous energy that made the lights in his apartment flicker too. "They must have detected the energy signatures from our crystals," she said, touching her pendant. "I should have been more careful. The mental linking sessions were too strong, too frequent." Tom turned from the window. "We knew this might happen. Father's files warned us about the monitoring agency." He picked up his tablet, showing her the security footage he'd hacked from the building's cameras. Men in dark suits were questioning his neighbors, showing photographs. Alice's face showed worry, but there was something else in her expression. Determination. "It's time," she said. "My people are ready. We've prepared for this moment for years. The question is—" She looked at Tom with those star-filled eyes. "Are you ready?" Before Tom could answer, both their crystals began pulsing urgently. Alice's eyes widened. "They're here. Multiple ships just beyond your moon. The first diplomatic fleet." She touched her crystal, and a holographic display appeared in the air between them, showing dozens of points of light moving into position around Earth's orbit. Tom's phone buzzed. It was a news alert. Astronomers worldwide were reporting unusual activity in near-Earth orbit. Social media was exploding with amateur telescope photos of the lights in the sky. There was no hiding it anymore. "If I step forward now, reveal myself as the ambassador," Alice said, "everything changes. Not just for us, but for both our worlds. The agency won't be able to hide me anymore, but they might try to control the narrative. And you," she reached for his hand, "you'll be exposed too. Everything Father did to protect you, all these years of secrecy." A sharp knock at the door made them both jump. "Mr. Miller," a stern voice called. "This is Agent Davis with the Office of Special Affairs. We need to speak with you immediately." Through their crystal connection, Tom could feel Alice's mix of fear and resolve. He squeezed her hand, making a decision. "Remember what you taught me when we were kids?" he asked. "About your people's belief in moments of change." Alice's eyes softened. "The crossing points," she said, "when multiple paths converge and a single choice ripples across all possible futures." Tom nodded, then did something that surprised them both. He laughed. "You know, all those years ago, Father didn't just protect us. He prepared us for this exact moment." He walked to his desk and pulled out the last file he'd found in the basement, the one he hadn't shown her yet. It was a detailed plan, written in their father's hand, outlining exactly how to handle first contact. Not just diplomatic protocols, but public relations strategies, scientific documentation, everything needed to help humanity accept the reality of alien life. He'd spent his final years putting it all together. The knocking grew louder. Through the door's security camera, they could see more agents arriving in the hallway. "Father knew this day would come," Tom said. "He knew we'd face this choice together." He touched his crystal to hers. "I say we trust his plan. Trust what he saw in us." Alice's skin began to glow brighter, and she stood straighter. "Together then," she said, "as brother and sister, as bridges between worlds." Tom walked to the door, feeling strangely calm. Through their connected crystals, he could sense the ships above, waiting. He could feel the weight of this moment, the convergence of 30 years of preparation. "Ready?" he asked his sister. Alice moved to stand beside him, her otherworldly beauty now fully visible, no longer hidden. "Ready, little brother," she said with a smile that lit up the room literally. As Tom reached for the door handle, both their crystals pulsed in perfect sync, filling the apartment with blue-gold light. Outside, the first of Alice's people's ships were becoming visible in the evening sky, their arrival impossible to deny or hide. The moment of choice had arrived, and they would face it as their father had always meant them to, together. The United Nations Assembly Hall had never been so full. Representatives from every nation sat in tense silence as Tom stood at the podium, his sister Alice beside him. Their crystals glowed softly, visible to the hundreds of cameras broadcasting this moment around the world. It had been 3 days since they'd opened Tom's apartment door to face the agents. 3 days of intense meetings, explanations, and revelations. The agents had been surprised to find that their own superiors had been expecting this moment, working from protocols that Tom's father had helped establish decades ago. "My father was a man who could see beyond boundaries," Tom began, his voice steady. "When a lost child from the stars crashed on our planet 30 years ago, he didn't see an alien to be studied. He saw a daughter to be protected. When she formed a bond with his son, he didn't see it as a security risk. He saw it as hope for our future." Alice stepped forward, her natural glow causing whispers of amazement through the crowd. She no longer tried to hide her otherworldly nature. Her skin shimmered with patterns of light that danced as she moved, and her hair floated gently in its own gravitational field. "My people have watched humanity for a long time," she said, her musical voice carrying clearly through the hall. "We waited for the right moment to make contact, but what we didn't expect was to find a bridge already built, through the love of a human father for his children, one born of Earth and one born of the stars." On the massive screens behind them, images appeared, carefully selected photos and videos from their father's files. The crashed escape pod, Tom and Alice playing together, sharing thoughts through their crystals, their father's careful documentation of their growing bond. The ability to share thoughts and memories isn't just a technology for my people, Alice continued. It's how we build trust, how we forge families. When I shared this gift with Tom as children, it created something unprecedented, a human capable of fully understanding our way of thinking. Tom touched his crystal, and suddenly the screen showed what he was seeing through their mental link. Images of Alice's homeworld, its crystal cities catching the light of twin suns, its people living in harmony with technology far beyond Earth's current understanding. We stand here today not just as ambassadors between worlds, Tom said, but as proof that our differences can become our greatest strengths. My sister and I are living proof that humanity is ready for this next great step. The ships in orbit became visible through the assembly hall's glass ceiling, their elegant forms catching the sunlight. They no longer hid themselves, but they maintained a respectful distance, waiting. Our father left us a blueprint, Tom continued, holding up the file they'd found in his basement. Not just for first contact, but for how our worlds can work together. He spent his life preparing for this moment, believing in a future where his children, all his children, could live without hiding who they are. Alice raised her crystal, and Tom did the same. As they touched, a holographic display filled the hall, showing the possibilities their father had envisioned. Shared scientific advancement, cultural exchange, a future of cooperation between worlds. We are not here to change your world, Alice said softly. We are here to grow together, to learn from each other. Just as a human father taught an alien child about love, and a human brother showed that bonds of family transcend the boundaries of species. Tom looked out at the assembled leaders of Earth, seeing hope and fear, excitement and uncertainty in their faces. He felt Alice's presence in his mind, supportive and strong, just as she had been when they were children. The choice is yours, they said together, their voices joining as their crystals pulsed in harmony. We offer friendship between worlds, understanding between peoples. We offer a future limited only by our ability to see each other not as aliens, but as family. Above them, the ships began to glow with the same blue-gold light as their crystals, and in that light, Earth took its first step into a larger universe, guided by a brother and sister who had bridged the gap between worlds through the simple power of family love.